Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucs. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. And as always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to the Recher podcast. I am your host, Jay Recher. I know it is not a victory Wednesday. Man, we are searching for dubs here in Team Tampa Bay. Another rough one last night. We'll get into what happened up in Boston for our Tampa Bay Lightning. But first, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, on TikTok. I am everywhere. And man, the support that we've gotten here over the last couple of weeks has been really, really cool. And like and subscribe on YouTube. That is big. I was telling you my goals a couple of days ago. I want to try to get 10,000 followers on Twitter/X. So if you can follow me at JRetro over there. I want 4,000 followers on Instagram. Help me out over there. And then I need 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. They're growing. It's growing exponentially. And I can't thank you guys enough for all the love and support. Shout out to Thought as well as the Buccaneers podcast. We always want to hear from you. Questions, comments, concerns, leave them there at the bottom of the screen. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. That helps out a lot as well. First name greatest. I like it. Don't agree keeping Bowles, but glad to support you post WDAE. More on that in a second. Dolan, what up, Jay? Lightning, ouch. We got a great show for you today like we do every day. At 12:30, we'll have Greg Auman from Fox Sports joining us, talking all things Buccaneers. We're going to get Greg's opinion on whether or not Bowles should stay, whether Bowles should go, whether Liam Coen should be the guy that is the new head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and also Mike Evans. And I only saw a couple of people report on this, but I know I wasn't there, obviously, because I was here with you on Monday. But Mike Evans did not speak to the media Sunday night after the game. He's usually by his locker. He understands that, this is part of the Buccaneers. There you go. I didn't get to the Evans topic yesterday. Me and Scott, we went 31 minutes, and we spilled over to the time that I had with Sam Munson. So, yeah, you're on top of it. I appreciate it. But we're definitely getting into that today with Greg Auman because we didn't see Mike Evans Sunday night. And that's one thing we do love about our leaders for the Buccaneers and every team here in the Tampa Bay area is that for the most part, they speak after losses just as much as they do wins. So we'll find out today. And also today, and shout out to Dolan, the Beckles and Recher podcast at 3 p.m. I know that there is some issues with the internet over at the Dignitary Tea and Kava House right now. So I don't know if it's going to be live for sure. We're definitely going to record it today, but we're going to do the best we can to make sure that it's live at 3 p.m. today. And if it's not live, don't worry. We'll record it and put out the content. That's the goal. Our goal is to make sure that we're going live every single Wednesday at 3 p.m. Also on the program today, 1 o'clock, Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com, joins us for his weekly hit, What Happened in Beantown Last Night, and Brayden Point. I want to get to you in a second too, my friend. Not being available for the game last night because he missed the team meeting. We knew something was off in morning skate because he was not taking power play rushes. He was taking line rushes, but not power play rushes. So something to certainly keep an eye on. And then we're going to go up to Detroit. 97-1 the tickets. Marc Ryan is going to join us. And if you remember, Marc Ryan spent some time in Houston, spent some time in South Carolina, but also spent some time here in the Tampa Bay area, working for both of the sports radio stations here. The Fan, the short-lived sports station. I wasn't really around during the Fan days. I wish I was because I would love to see kind of that back and forth. But also, he was on WDA a little bit as well. But Mark's a great guy. We've been able to keep in touch for a long time. John Momola knows that Marc Ryan guy. He sure does. Marc Ryan's going to join us today at 1:30 to give us perspective of the Detroit Lions. They are on the precipice of playing in their first playoff game after getting the bye, being the number one seed in the NFC. Also, the red hot Detroit Red Wings, something to keep an eye on as we are talking about the Atlantic Division in the National Hockey League. But let's start with the discussion. Tampa guy brings it up. Bowles will be fired the minute they offer Liam a head coaching job. I'm thinking about the need for consistency, right? In sports, that's the most, I think, important thing when you're talking about your leadership. And we laud guys like John Cooper and Kevin Cash for not getting too high, not getting too low. That even keel mentality. Even when things are going terrible around them, they're just a modicum of patience and a modicum of strength. And they just show you, hey, no fear. It's going to work out. They also don't get too high when they win. They say, hey, listen, there's going to be some dark days ahead. We got to take it easy. And I look at that, and I'm yearning for consistency from some of our other teams in the Bay Area. I mean, watching the USF women's basketball team last night, losing 62-61 to UAB at home, mind-numbingly frustrating to see them lose 2 in a row, falling to 11-8 on the season. They already beat number 9 Duke a couple weeks ago at home. They thrashed them. The Lightning, after a couple of good games over the weekend, they didn't answer the bell when it was rang. They weren't ready to go last night, especially a guy like Victor Hedman, a couple of costly blunders. And I know there were some empty net goals, but it's a 6-2 loss. All we want is for our teams to be consistent. Give me a good product on the field. Give me a team that's going to be in the postseason. Give me a team that you're proud to cheer for. Give me players that you can, hey, I like that guy. That's the kind of guy that I want to spend my money to watch. I want to buy his jersey. Give us an opportunity to root for good guys that aren't in the media for all the wrong reasons, guys that aren't getting arrested, guys that aren't in these disputes or bitching and moaning and wanting to be traded. Give me players, give me teams like that. Well, that's kind of what we've gotten from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Todd Bowles. Hell, we've even gotten some improvements, but it doesn't seem to still be good enough. And I'm just, it's the thing. And I know we've talked about it a lot in the last couple of days, but the future of Todd Bowles is the biggest question that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to answer this offseason. It's not anybody else. It's Todd Bowles, because it's a trickle-down effect from there. I truly believe there will be a bigger shift for this team if Todd Bowles leaves than if Liam Coen leaves. And we had such a great discussion over the last couple of days. And again, we're going to bring this up with Greg Auman at 12:30 today. But I implore you, after the podcast is over, after 2 o'clock today, to go back and listen to the conversation that we had with Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report. Now, Scott's been covering this team for a very, very long time, and there is precedent that the Glazers are very patient with these moves. And one thing that I pride myself on, and I know you guys know this, okay, is one of my favorite teams is this team right here, Manchester United, also owned by the Glazers. And one thing that we've learned through their handling of the Buccaneers and their handling with Manchester United is that they don't rush into making these decisions when it comes to hiring and firing head coaches. Manchester United dealing with just awful coaches over the years, ever since Sir Alex Ferguson's moved on and retired. And they took, they fired a guy like David Moyes, but they took their time with everybody else. They don't like to make these moves in the middle of the season. They like to do it at the end of the year. They like to take their time, assess what has gone right, assess what has gone wrong, and then try to make the best decision moving forward. Now, when you look at this Buccaneers team, right, I think we could all agree that it's good to make the playoffs. We want to get in there, okay? We want to make sure that you're one of the teams in the dance to give yourself an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. But the fact of the matter is it's only going to be one team. So for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to make the playoffs once again, 3 years in a row as the division champs under Todd Bowles, I ask, how are we really judging this? Are we judging this on the curve? Are we judging this realistically? I mean, you're talking about a team that before Bruce Arians and Tom Brady got here was the most futile franchise in all of sports. And a lot of people still bring that up. And I get both sides of the argument. I understand half of the people going, that's the past, and the past. But then there's another side going, did you not just live through what we just lived through? Did you not just experience a team that had their games blacked out on TV? We'll take division crowns. It doesn't mean that you're complacent. It doesn't mean that you don't want more. But at the very least, you're in the playoffs every year. I can see that. But I also come from the belief that for most teams in the National Football League, it's championship or bust. Now, realistic expectations for certain teams, are they going to win a championship? No. So you want to see progress. You want to see development. But if you win a playoff game last year, like the Buccaneers did against the Philadelphia Eagles, you would think that this year, the next step in the process would be making it to the NFC Championship game, right? Winning 2 playoff games. But progress is not a incremental climb where you win 1 game, you win 2 games, you win the conference championship, or you win the Super Bowl. It's just not the way it goes. It's not the way it goes. Nobody thought that Tom Brady was going to come in here year 1 without a preseason, without a training camp, and win a Super Bowl. They thought, hey, make them contenders, get into the playoffs, make a deep postseason run, and then build to that. And hopefully, ideally, Tom Brady would win a Super Bowl here. That's not what happened. Year 1, Super Bowl, boom. And then I think some people thought, yeah, this is how it's going to be every single year. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but they did make the playoffs every single year that Tom Brady was here. All 3 seasons Tom was here, the Bucs made the playoffs. If I would have told you 10 years ago that the Buccaneers would make the playoffs as many times as they did, right, 5 years running, you would take that in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. All I'm saying is we have to adjust the expectations on where this franchise was to where it is right now. Or do we? Are you looking at this team now as a team that should be vying for the Super Bowl every year? And I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't. Because the roster is not good enough. Going into the season, and I got this from John Romano, and that's why this is such an entertaining, this is such a great conversation to have, because there's so many layers to it. There's such depth to this discussion. Because you're not talking about a franchise that has had success for 30, 40 years, and it's like it's only a matter of time before they get back there. We're not talking about the Red Wings from the 90s to the 2000s, or maybe a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're talking about a team that was terrible. They were horrible. Forget mediocrity. They sucked. Now the last 5 years they make the playoffs, and now the perception is changing. The perception is changing here in the Tampa Bay area that the Buccaneers and their fan base should be expecting long postseason runs every single year. Now, does that come from the roster that was built for this season, or does that come because you just won a Super Bowl 5 years ago? I think it's the latter. Because when you look at this roster, and again, I go back to the article written by John Romano of the Tampa Bay Times, and I hopefully get him on the show tomorrow. One thing that you're going to get here on this podcast is you're not going to get one shit on one side, and I'm just going to be like, oh, this is it, and not going to look on the other side. Because I still don't think they should get rid of Todd Bowles. But I had Scott Reynolds on the pod yesterday for 30 minutes saying that he thinks the team has reached its ceiling, and that Liam Coen should be the guy that gets elevated to the head coaching position, because look at the other examples throughout the league. And then you read an article from John Romano from the Tampa Bay Times today, and I implore you to read it, support our local media, stating that it would probably be a mistake, and giving a list of examples of offensive coordinators that did get elevated that pooped the bed. Guys like Josh McDaniels, right? Remember how this guy was the mastermind, Tom Brady's right-hand man. He failed in Denver and the Raiders, right? When Tom Brady leaves and you have all of that dead cap money, it has to get spread out all over all these subsequent years. If you look at so many other teams in the National Football League, when they get hit with dead cap money, it crumbles them to the ground. Look at a team like Denver. Denver paid Russell Wilson all that money. They eventually moved on from him, right? But they got to a point where that they were drafting so high that they picked Bo Nix. right? There was no, lucky for them, good for them. They had a coach to be able to bounce back and get back into the playoffs this year, but they still had to have a down year. They didn't have to, they weren't able to sustain the ability to make the playoffs like the Buccaneers have under Todd Bowles. When you look at this Bucs team, they have had to kind of maneuver around some of these cap issues to try to keep their guys and then try to bring their guys back. But when you honestly look at this team on paper, were they good enough to win the Super Bowl this year? I know that's what your goal is, and I know that's what the team's goal is. They're trying to go all the way. They're trying to build off of what happened last year. But you can't honestly tell me on that defense with guys that really can't sack the quarterback from the outside, with linebackers where your best linebacker is a 35-year-old Lavonte David, with you lose your third corner, Bryce Hall in game one. Jamel Dean was banged up all year long, okay? That's a position that only has 4 or 5 guys. You got 40% of them done. The safety position wasn't healthy all year. It was either Antoine was out, Tyke was out, Jordan Whitehead was out, Christian Izien was out. They had so many injuries to different spots. They didn't have the depth to put them in a position to succeed on that side of the ball. Now, is it on Todd Bowles to be able to figure that out? Yes, 100%. But at the end of the day, you can't win games without talent. You need to go out there and you need to make sure that your players are healthy in order for you to win. If you don't do that, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. We talked about a couple of draft picks that hurt the Bucs too. Kyle Trask, wasted draft pick. Waste. Could have got a pass rusher in that spot. You didn't. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, a guy that they brought in to try to make sure that they fortified that pass rush. Bad draft pick. Didn't work out. You brought back Shaq Barrett. More of an emotional thing than anything else. But when you look at Chris Braswell this year, is he going to turn it around? I wasn't too impressed with what I saw from him. Yaya Diaby made some plays, but in order for him to really warrant being a top-tier edge rusher, he's got to have 10 to 15 sacks from the outside linebacker position. We didn't see that this year. You got to get better in your pass rush. You got to get better at the linebacker. You got to get better in the secondary. If you're talking about necessary improvements for all 3 levels of your defense, I don't think you could put all of that on the head coach. He's got to be better. Right. I understand that. I do agree with Scott Reynolds saying that when you're talking about the coaches and being able to adapt, yes, I do think there's improvement there. But there needs to be an influx of youth and an influx of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Look at what you've been able to do on the offensive side of the ball just in the last couple of years to make your team better. You've got Graham Barton as your rookie center. Okay? You've got Cody Mauch as your guard. Go back a couple years ago in the draft and look at Gedeke and Wirfs. It's 4/5 of your offensive line. You drafted, you developed, you coached those guys up to be one of the best offensive lines in football. Evans, we know draft pick. Godwin, we know a draft pick. Just look at some of the young guys. Look at the contributions in the last couple of weeks from Payne Durham and Devin Culp. Right? When Kate Otten goes down, those guys coming up with big catches on third down, touchdown grabs. Bucky Irving in the backfield. Jalen McMillan as a wideout. You had young guys pushing from the bottom these veterans to play up to their capabilities. Bucky did it to Rashad. Rashad didn't answer the bell. Bucky's RB1. Jalen McMillan, you saw early on in the season, a couple nice grabs. When Chris started really feeling good, Jalen kind of in the middle of the season took a step down. Those guys got hurt. Boom, he stepped up. That's what you want to see. You want to see these young guys step up. We saw Graham Barton battling Big Bob Hainsey before the season. Who was going to be the starting center? Graham Barton won that job. You're not seeing that same thing on defense. You saw it last year, at the end of last year, where Yaya was pushing Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. So by the end of the 2023 regular season, Yaya Diaby was the starter and it wasn't Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. So as much as people want to put this on Todd Bowles, they have to get better personnel-wise on the defense as well. And again, just because Liam Coen is a good play caller and had himself a good year, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a good head coach. And that's what worries me. People think, oh, this is the ceiling for Todd Bowles. Scott said so. Scott said as much yesterday. I don't necessarily agree with that. How do you know if Todd Bowles is if that's his ceiling when you are devoid of talent on the defensive side of the ball? I'm not saying that absolves him from blame, but you got to think, hey, what has he got to work with here? If he's sending JTS out there to rush the passer, is that good enough? If he's got JJ Russell playing out there, if he's got KJ Britt playing out there at the linebacker position, if he's got Josh Hayes playing corner, is that on Todd Bowles? Those guys are backups and special teamers for a reason. Those guys aren't starting on other teams. I hope they keep Liam Coen as a play caller. I still think he has room to improve. I don't like some of the playing calls at Liam Coen. And I know that's weird for some people to say, right? Liam Coen's this great play caller, and I think he did have a really good first year. No doubt about it. But he has to learn on that side of the ball too. Were you guys at the San Francisco game where they get down to the red zone and they call just a terrible play calling? And then they end up kicking a field goal. And then the same thing that happened in the Washington game, San Francisco marches all the way down, and Jake Moody, who missed 3 before then, kicks the game winner. Bad play calling. The jet sweep. I don't know if it was the worst play call, but it sure as hell wasn't the best. We got to stop being in this mode of just low-hanging fruit of the comparisons. And I know people are just going to simply compare this to the Tony Dungy and John Gruden thing. I understand that. But this is a different ballgame, okay? You're talking about elevating a guy that's never been a head coach before. When you went to the Dungy years, you were bringing in a guy like John Gruden, who was already a head coach in the National Football League for, 3 years? He already knew what it took to be a head coach. There is going to be things. Let's say that moves does get made. Let's say that Todd Bowles, they move on from him and they elevate Liam Coen. There's going to be things that happen in the 2025 regular season that Liam Coen has never, ever dealt with before. Is that what you want to deal with? All these people that are bitching and moaning about mediocrity. Oh man, that's terrible. I can't believe that they won a division title again. That's such a bad thing. Just because you make a change doesn't mean the change is going to be better. Do you really want to go through a learning curve next year with Liam Coen as a head coach when Mike Evans is getting a year older? Let's say Lavonte does come back next year. You want to have him come back next year and then Liam Coen makes some mistakes and then this team doesn't make the playoffs next season? Then what? Be careful what you wish for, because I do like Liam. I think he's a good play caller. But to think that he's just going to come in here and automatically take this team to a height that Todd Bowles hasn't been able to get this team to, I think that is a much taller ask than people realize. Some people don't like Todd Bowles because of his demeanor. Some people don't like Todd Bowles because they look at his defense at times and they go, I can't believe you're leaving these guys open. Hell, I'm one of those when you're talking about that thing. But I just want to say pump the brakes sometimes in situations like that. When you have a good thing, I don't agree with Scott. I don't think that this Buccaneers team has reached the ceiling with Todd Bowles. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is because of the lack of talent. I told you that. 2, I want to look at a situation where in the middle of the season, and Lavonte said this the other day, when things go bad with this team, nobody's bitching and moaning. Nobody's trying to get out. There aren't leaks coming out of the Tampa Bay locker room of this team hates Todd Bowles. This team thinks there should be a change in leadership. Doesn't happen. And sometimes that thing happens if it's a defensive-minded head coach. Sometimes it comes from the defensive side. Sometimes it comes from the offensive side. Man, these guys ain't doing their thing over there. We're carrying the water too much. You didn't hear that with the Bucs. You hear that all across the National Football League. You hear that in every freaking sport when things go wrong. There's cracks in the foundation. No cracks in the foundation for the Bucs the last 2 years. We didn't even hear it this year. There was no, here we go again. Woe is me. Feel bad. You didn't hear people late to meetings. You didn't hear people getting in trouble outside of the facility. Todd Bowles doesn't get any credit for that. None. All I'm saying, be careful what you wish for. I do think changes need to be made, but I don't know if one of those changes needs to be Todd Bowles getting the boot, das Boot. Here we go. Buccaneers. We literally gave Bowles a $4 million quarterback last year and never before OC, and he killed it. Found an even better OC, and now Pete's demand. He's gone. Odd. Yeah, that is kind of funny too. We talk about Liam Coen and how he was able to really do a great job this year, and the offense really picked up the slack for the defense. Well, what about 2 years ago? What about when Dave Canales was here? And they couldn't run the football at all. They were 32nd in the league in rushing. This is a team that went to Carolina, or they played Carolina in that game. They won 9-0. They kicked 3 field goals, 0 points given up by Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers defense. It's funny how we forget from one year to the next. Some years your defense might be a little bit better. Some years your offense might be a little bit better. But let's not forget that when this team is playing its best football, it's when the defense is playing well. And a lot of times, Todd Bowles is the guy that's been the mastermind for that. First name greatest, dropping your best rushers into coverage and having receivers with uncontested catches is coaching malpractice. So you can say that when it doesn't work out. But in that third down in Dallas, when Vita Vea got dropped into coverage and he laid the absolute smackdown, Rocky Maivia on Jake Ferguson to get the ball back for the Bucs, nobody was saying, I can't believe Vita Vea is in coverage. 2 years ago, when Vita Vea picked off Aaron Rodgers in the end zone, nobody was saying, oh my God, I can't believe they're dropping those guys into coverage. It was, wow, look at how exotic Todd Bowles' blitz package is. Look at how Todd Bowles has these versatile defenders all over the place. It's pick your poison. Sometimes it's going to bite you. But when everybody's there and he has a full complement of his players, that is one of the most difficult defenses to go against in the National Football League. So we have to keep things in perspective. That's the one thing that drives me crazy when it comes to Todd Bowles, more than anybody else, more than anything else when we have this discussion, is that people want to shit all over Todd Bowles when things go wrong. But gosh darn it, man, nobody gives this guy any credit. Nobody. And again, I'll say it once and I'll say it a million times. There were not many people here in the Tampa Bay area that were worried about Todd Bowles getting elevated to the head coach, and I was certainly one of them because I saw what happened with the Jets, with half of my friends being Jet fans. Tom Krasnicki was one of them. He's a Jets fan. But isn't it ironic that right now, after all of this happened, Tom and I both agree on this? Go listen to Tom Krasnicki at 3 o'clock today. Well, watch our podcast. Listen to them on the iHeartRadio app later on. So maybe don't listen to it today. Listen to some of the other shows. But ask Tom yourself. Ask him. He'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. And again, we were the two guys, loud and vocal, letting everybody know, be careful what you wish for Todd Bowles. But he's made some changes. That defense and that team was crumbling at the end of his tenure with the Jets. This is a team that has won 3 division crowns in a row. Don't tell me this guy hasn't made adjustments over the years. Now, when you look at what he has to do going forward, that is a different discussion altogether. He has to make adjustments. No doubt about it. Again, we get into this black and white type of thing when we're trying to assess what happened and we're trying to analyze things. Just because I support the Buccaneers bringing back Todd Bowles doesn't mean he's absolved from blame. It doesn't mean that you can't say, hey, part of this is your fault. It is. He's the defensive play caller and he's the head coach. He's got to wear this. Of course he does. But so does Jason Light. He's got to do a better job of bringing in players on the defensive side of the ball. So do the players themselves. So do the assistant coach. Assistant coach is. They literally traded their CB1. Buccaneers, you're on fire today. Hall missed the entire season. Winfield missed a bunch. Whitehead missed a bunch. D missed a bunch. Secondary was thin. There you go. There you go. You're going to get on T-Crass for that. Pick the Falcons. First name, last name ever. First name greatest. Like a sprained ankle, dog. You ain't nothing to play with. Listen. We're all going to make predictions that don't work out. I said NC State was going to win the ACC this year. Didn't work out. Not even close. Okay? when you're asked for predictions before the season, not every single one of them are going to be right. And when you're in a position like Tom is, and people know where to find you every day, I mean, it's just the way it's going to go. People are going to come at you. Nobody's going to be right 100% of the time. Nobody. I did say the Bucs are going to win the division. I wasn't buying that Falcons crap from the beginning. Not one chance. I wasn't buying that. And I still don't buy Raheem either. I don't think Raheem's a great coach. I think he's a great guy, but I just don't buy him as a successful coach in the National Football League. And I want to answer my buddy Nelly. It helps the NFC South was one of the weakest. I get that. But Nell, let's not forget, they lost both games to the Falcons this year. And they also beat a couple of teams that are still in the playoffs right now. They went into Detroit and beat the Lions, and they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people think that's going to be the NFC Championship game. I think it's hard to dispute that. But let's not forget, for all the people talking about how bad things were this year for the Buccaneers, they did beat 2 of the remaining 4 teams in the NFC. Let's keep the Buccaneers conversation going. We'll do it with our guy, Greg Auman from Fox Sports. Greg, I was going to try to talk a little Brayden Point and all this Todd Bowles discussion, brother. I had Scott Reynolds on, our buddy from Pewter Report, yesterday, and he believes that the Bucs have reached the ceiling with Todd Bowles. And then an article today from our pal John Romano in the Tampa Bay Times saying, hey, that would be, a rash decision, and gave many examples of why you don't want to elevate an OC before he's ready. And I like Liam Coen, but I do have my reservations of a guy like Liam Coen being elevated because he's 39. He's never been a head coach before. This isn't Gruden, where he was a 3-year head coach, with the Raiders before coming here. I want to ask you your opinion on whether you think Todd will be back and whether you should be back to start things off today.
Yeah, sure. I think he will be back. And honestly, I think he should be back. Again, if you can show me somebody else in NFL history that won 3 straight division titles and got canned, no matter how crappy the divisions were, let me know. That's not usually, you don't. I get people making parallels to Tony Dungy and how Tony hit a point where the ownership thought maybe this is as far as you can take the team. And again, sure enough, next year Gruden takes him and wins the Super Bowl. I don't know if all the parallels line up for that. I thought John Romano did a great job today in kind of laying that out. Dropped a Rob Chudzinski reference in the paper, which is always strong. But no, I think, with Coen, it's one of those where, Coen had an amazing season, like literally maybe the best offensive season in Bucs history, statistically speaking, and when you're doing things better than they did with Tom Brady, that says something, and overall their numbers are better than they were Tom Brady. Best balance an offense the Bucs have ever had. The run game. And again, it's not like everything is the same and Liam Coen arrived and things got better. Offensive line is better. Bucky Irving is a playmaker that they probably haven't seen here since Doug Martin. There are lots of other things that have contributed to this offensive rise, but I think in terms of taking things and making them better, it's a much bigger leap this year than it was last year when everybody got excited about Dave Canales replacing Byron Leftwich, and Canales got a head coaching job. So I think in both cases, you have 2 guys that are making really big leaps. Okay. For Canales, even though he'd been in the NFL 14 years, never been a coordinator, never been a play caller, comes Tampa, does well, and takes a second leap. You think about tripling your salary 2 years in a row, really hard to do that. Okay. And did it. And again, it's good progress in the first year in Carolina. There's nothing about what Dave Canales did that should give pause to anybody wondering about what a Bucs offensive coordinator can do as a head coach. Liam Coen is in the SEC last year. He's a college coordinator, So this is a big leap all by itself. And again, the question NFL teams will have is, can he make the same leap again? Can he handle another major upgrade in job title and perform at a high level? And he's right there. There's enough jobs that are open right now. He'll be in the mix. He'll be in the thick of things. So it's just a matter of whether he gets an offer, whether it's a team that he feels like is worth leaving a good situation here for. It's tough to turn those offers down. The money is crazy right now. You're talking about at a minimum $5-6 million a year, 5 or 6 years, fully guaranteed. If you're terrible and you get fired after 1 year, you're getting paid for 5. Right. So there aren't many opportunities to have that kind of generational wealth as a coach when you've slogged along for 15, 20 years, making a lot less than that.
I guess too, when people are talking about, oh my God, we can't let Liam go out the door. I mean, there are other offensive coordinators out there, right? Like that's the thing. And I said this earlier and I wanted to get your opinion. I said this on Monday. I think the Buccaneers are in a better spot now, if Liam were to leave, than they were after Byron and after Canales, because there's proof of concept, there's stability at the head coaching position, there's a stability at the quarterback, and you have good young playmakers as well as veteran guys and an offensive line. So I think it's been tough because we know that Canales and Liam Coen were not the first choices of the Buccaneers. I think it would be easier to get an offensive coordinator. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, and the other thing is that you also now really should give some credit to Todd Bowles and to some extent Jason Light and their ability to identify OCs, in that it's easier to get a retread and somebody who's done this and done that. Canales and Coen really hadn't done what they were asked to do in Tampa, and both of them made their teams better. And that to me is the single biggest evaluation of a hire is the job better than when you found it? So again, like if the Bucs don't want Liam Coen to leave, they don't want to lose Liam Coen. And if they did, whoever that next guy is, it's going to be hard for him to match the success they had. Don't get me wrong. But they're also going to feel pretty good about their ability to find somebody that's well suited, whether it's somebody on their own staff, whether it's opening up and going outside again. It's not like they interviewed 9 guys last year and they only liked Liam Coen. There's other guys in that process that they liked who might be more available now, who might be, wow, this is actually a top 5 offense instead of me taking over a 21st ranked offense and I'm not sure what the line is like. There's a lot of reasons to like this job. It'll be a coveted job, more so than it was a year ago. It doesn't mean they're going to hit on it as well as they did with Liam Coen, but if they had to, there's reasons to be optimistic they could still find a good coach and still do really well.
Yeah, it's not like, hey, come over and take over the 32nd best running attack.
Right. I mean, and that's something that, honestly, that's something that's kind of chronic, if you will. You look at what their run game was from like 17 to 24, 2 years in a row, not only last in yards, but last in yards per carry. So that tells you, again, that says there's some fundamental problems with the line, with the backs you're inheriting. And now, I mean, with the exception maybe of Ben Bredesen, that line's going to be back intact.
Right.
They can add to it. They can actually upgrade it in theory. And the backs are all back. So it should be a run game that goes into next season as the expectation of being a top 10 or a top 5 run game. And that's a draw. That makes your life easier as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, you want less questions and more answers when you're trying to take a job like that. And I'm curious to see if Elijah Klein is a guy that they take a look at in that spot, because I know late in the preseason there was a lot of, like, they made him available for some radio interviews, and you saw him play a couple of different spots on the line in the preseason. You're like, man, maybe that's the guy. I'd keep an eye on him at that guard spot. I wanted to ask you about Mike Evans. I didn't get a chance to talk about this yet, but I know he didn't speak Sunday night because I was in the locker room and I wasn't there. Obviously, I was here on Monday. He didn't speak to the media Monday, did he?
No. I mean,
is that cause for concern at all? Because Mike is a guy that he speaks after every game, good or bad. He's one of those guys. I think it just struck me. I don't know. It's like a big worry, but it was just a little funky that Mike didn't speak after the season. Should we look into that at all?
Yeah, I don't think so. I wasn't in the Bucs locker room at all. I wrote Commanders after the game. I kind of was tasked with writing with the winner and moving forward to that. So I was in the Washington, which is what I did in week 1, which is strange, even though they lost. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's one of those where the post-game locker room in the NFL, if you're there for the head coach, and you almost always want to be there for the head coach, the locker room has started being open when Bowles starts talking. So even if Bowles only goes 6-7 minutes, if you immediately go in that locker room, there are guys that are gone. There are guys that talked, and there's guys that left without talking. So it's kind of like, it's not like he's going to sit around and go like, man, I know this is over. I sure would like to talk to the media about losing. And,
yeah, right.
So I think guys leave. Monday, our access is an open locker room, but again, that's not always a high participation level. It was great that we got Lavonte. We talked to other people, key people. But again, I wasn't expecting Mike Evans to be there. I mean, there's no reason to worry. Mike Evans is back under contract. I think he's happy where he is. Again, got the absolute joy of winning a division title, extending that record a week earlier. This is not how he wanted the season to end. I thought Mike had a good game. Like most parts of the offense, they wanted more of it, obviously. But what he did and what he was asked to do, I thought he did fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of not going to the press conferences anymore because I just go right to the locker room because I want to be able to get some of that talk because everybody has Todd Bowles and everybody has Baker Mayfield, but I want to be able to talk to Tristan and some of these other guys. And Bucky and Rashad, they leave right away. Like you can't get those guys. Like you get them as they're grabbing their food on the way out. Hey, Bucky, good game. But Mike is, and that's the reason why I ask, is because Mike is usually there and he doesn't usually get out. But when we walked in, Mike was actually one of the first people that walked out, which I just thought it was a little funky that, Kate Otton's walking around giving daps to everybody, saying goodbye to everybody. So it just, he's just probably taking the loss a little bit harder than others. A guy that took the loss really hard was Lavonte David. He had tears in his eyes when we were over there. It's hard to hear him because he's whispering and he's not the loudest guy anyway, Greg. But man, Sunday night, KJ Britt walked by me. He had tears in his eyes. Lavonte had tears in his eyes. And you and I have been in there after Buccaneer regular season losses, playoff losses, season ending losses. And I've never seen Lavonte that like rattled. What about your gut? Does your gut tell you that that's it for Lavonte?
I don't know. It definitely, I think you definitely weigh that with a very real understanding that it could be the last time you're in this locker room. It could be the last time you're getting dressed after a game. And it's after a loss. That's not how you want to finish your career. So I sit there with Lavonte and I wonder, I think Lavonte played better in 2024 than he did in 23. I thought he was just all around better. Again, unequivocally the leader of this defense, puts everybody in the right spot, makes plays well beyond his years. I don't think it's a matter of whether Lavonte could come back. They'd welcome him back. It would be comparable to whatever he made this year, and you're thrilled to have him. I mean, inside linebacker is a major question mark for the Bucs, whether Lavonte is back or not.
Right.
In that if he's back, that's great, but you have to be planning for life after him. And you also have to fill the spot next to him. I mean, they had three guys just kind of rotating in a waiver wire claim in Deion Jones, and J.J. Russell is a backup, and K.J. Britt is a part-time guy. That's not the answer. None of those three should be your week one starter next to Lavonte David. So whether it's a high draft pick, whether it's spending, because it's the nice thing about inside linebackers, you can spend and get a good linebacker without necessarily paying a lot. But they need to address it. Again, Lavonte, I think for him, what it comes down to is he went out as a division champ. He went out in a home playoff game. If he thinks that can happen again, if he feels good physically about where he is, he's at an age where most people aren't playing linebacker. It's like him and DeMario, I guess Brooks back in the day. This actually is a team that has a history of old linebackers, which is cool. But it's not the norm. So again, if he wants to walk away, he's had an amazing career. He'll have people making a strong case for him being a Hall of Famer 5 years later. I think he could play again. I think he probably still play at a high level. It's just a matter of, do you want to go out feeling like you still had your A game? Do you risk maybe not being as fast or maybe not being the player you are? I mean, I think he's deserved the right to find that out. And I think the only two options for him are returning or retiring. I don't think we're going to see him Bobby Wagnering with another team or something.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know what he wants to do. It's one of those where he's earned the right to go out on his own, and that's honestly better than some Bucs legends have on that side of the ball.
You got that right, buddy. I wanted to ask you this, like on like a reporter or journalist type level, because you've been doing this longer than me. I've been doing it for more than 10 years now, which is kind of crazy to think that it's been over a decade for me here doing this in Tampa. Do you feel you never know when these guys make these decisions, right? But do you feel like being around locker rooms more, you have a better idea? Or is it because like Alex Killorn was sitting at his locker after the Lightning lost and he just sat there and it was just like, that's not, we just lost in the playoffs, sat there. That was my last game in the Lightning uniform. Yeah. Steven Stamkos did it last year and he was looking out into the crowd, standing on the ice. And some people were, you don't know, but there's just feelings that you get that guys are leaning one way or the other. Am I crazy for thinking that? Or is that one of those things where it's just like, when you have the experience of being in locker rooms, you kind of pick up on things that maybe you wouldn't if it's your first year covering a team?
Yeah. I mean, again, like we talked to Lavonte at his locker and, was asking him what it's like. Again, Lavonte's first 7 to 8 years in Tampa, they didn't make the playoffs. So the idea that they've made the playoffs 5 years in a row, and people are upset and looking for a change of head coach, that kind of thing. You're aware of how much he's raised the bar in Tampa, and the expectations have changed so much, even in the last 5 years. From, again, everybody points to Brady, and Brady elevated the expectations absolutely. But the guys that have carried that in 2 full years since he's been gone now, I think they appreciate that it's a different world, and they're leaving the franchise in a different state and expectation than where they found it. So again, like if you're Lavonte, again, if you take this year's Bucs team and you give them the injury luck of 2020, okay, which means Godwin is there on Sunday, and it means Whitehead and Servassier Dennis, and again, if a corner goes down, Bryce Hall is there to help out. If you give them that, they win more games. They're probably in a better position at the end of the game Sunday. But you don't know that next year's going to have better injury luck. It could be worse. This team hasn't had a quarterback miss a game with injury, I guess, since maybe 18. So there's things that can go wrong that are completely out of your control. And you come back, again, Brady came back in 22 thinking he had one thing, and it played out not the same way. And you don't want to go out that way. And I think Brady probably an example of not having the finish you want in that last year, because an 8-9 team and a first-round division playoff loss it isn't a Tom Brady finish,
Right.
But again, you don't know whether it's going to be better or worse. I think he likes what he does. I think he loves being a leader and a mentor and a guy that everyone in that locker room leans on and counts on and learns from every day. But I don't know if that means there's another year of that left for him.
The Bucs 2025 draft pick in the first round is going to be used for what position, do you think?
I almost guarantee it's on defense. It's not on defense. It's not on defense. Again, maybe an OJ Howard falls to them or something.
No way. No way. All right, where specifically?
Right. What they have to decide is going to the premium positions, which for them would be edge or cornerback. Okay. And somebody pointed out they've drafted last 4 years of the draft, top 4 rounds of the draft, they've had one defensive back that they've taken. That's Tyke Smith this past year. So they've neglected corner. Part of the reason they've done that is because they drafted so well the years before, and you had Winfield and Davis and Dean and Murphy Bunting and all these types. They need a dose of youth and talent at a high level. So you could totally, 19 a year ago got you the first corner in the draft. I don't think that'll be the case this year. You're probably on the 3rd or 4th corner at 19 now. Linebacker. Okay. Again, if you're looking to replace Lavonte David, that's an excuse to put a premium first round pick into a position like inside linebacker that doesn't always go that high. So that wouldn't surprise me. Georgia has some outstanding defensive players that Todd Bowles knows really well. And could be good matches at 19, including linebacker. Edge, I think everything on defense can start and end with, did you have a lot of pressure rushing forth the quarterback? And they don't have I think Diaby's close, but they don't have a game-changing double-digit sack guy on their roster right now. You can add one, in theory, at 19. Jared Verse with the Rams. You look at what he's done. He's a guy who was there at 19. So that could be them. One of those 3 positions, if I'm guessing right now, if they can have the best linebacker in this class, I can see them doing that. They got Lavonte in the 2nd round, so you can find a starter in the 2nd round. But it's between those 3, and it just depends on whether you're getting the 4th corner or the 1st linebacker or the 3rd edge. They've done a really good job for the most part of identifying these types. You think about Wirfs, you think about Winfield, you think about even Graham Barton this year. I know the Logan Halls and the JTSs and stuff haven't necessarily panned out they went to, but they've drafted well at the top for the most part.
Yeah, I think Logan Hall is kind of step in for that William Golston type where he's going to be able to stop the run. I don't know if he's ever going to be a big time, pass rusher, but that guy's available as hell. He's a big dude, takes up JTS, and it's kind of funny that we were speaking about this yesterday. No more JTS, no more Kyle Trask. For the job that Jason Light has done, he's done such a great job here in the last couple of years. Now that their tenures are done here, it's kind of interesting to kind of look back and see the Kyle Trask and the JTSs, where was Kyle ever going to get a chance after Brady, the quote unquote, competition with Baker, and JTS, man, he just, he was just a guy that was never able to get over the hump, Greg. He was either over pursuing or he didn't make the play at the top of the tree there. Those two guys just did not work out for the Bucs.
Yeah, I mean, and again, GTS was a guy that, hadn't played his senior year, certainly a freakish athlete, looked like someone who could do it, and it just never really clicked. You had moments, you had sacks here and there, but not the volume of plays and impact you need from a first-round pick. And Trask is a weird one. I mean, Trask, when they drafted him, I don't think they knew that Brady had 2 more years left in him. I don't think they knew that they would hit on Mayfield the way they did. Mm-hmm. So single biggest thing against Trask is just that he's been behind 2 really good quarterbacks who never get hurt and don't come off the field. And there's lots of other guys that are probably comparable to Kyle Trask that get to play because the guys in front of him got hurt. Davis Mills, got like 20 starts in Houston just because the people in front of him got hurt. So I don't know what happens to Kyle Trask. I don't think he has much reason to come back here because you're just asking for more of the same. He's got to go to a team with a wobbly quarterback situation, either with a rookie who might not be ready or a vet who's kind of not quite there. He's got to have a chance to win a job without somebody getting hurt. And again, for Kyle, he's kind of done this routine before in terms of waiting and being a backup before you get a chance. But I'll be curious to see what he picks and what the priorities are for him in terms of going somewhere, taking 1 year to maybe reset himself and try and get on the field at least.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, and I'm going to go through after we get off. I'm going to try to go through the teams and see where, because there's just so many young quarterbacks in the league now, right? They usually think, you stay in division, but I mean, is he going to want to go to a place where he's definitely going to sit? Like, how many jobs are going to have competition next year? Does he go to a place like the Giants, right? Right. There's
Giants,
so many...
Raiders, Titans. There's teams with bad quarterback situations. Right. And it's kind of like, even if you're not the best guy they take, quarterbacks in this year's class aren't going to be locked down week 1, start every game starters. They'll be guys that might not be ready. So you hate to put him in that role of that Tyrod Taylor bridge quarterback, somebody that can come in and kind of man things until the rookie's ready. That's a better lot than what he's had so far. And if he just gets a chance to play in real games and play a full game in the NFL and show what he can do, it might be great, it might be bad, we don't know. He hasn't had that in 4 years. So I think more than anything, he has to find a place that there's a real path for him to get on the field and get to show people what he can do. He hasn't had that.
If you had to take a guess right now, who would be the Super Bowl matchup? I got Ravens and Eagles.
Oh, man. I had it's funny. My preseason pick was Lions and Texans, and it didn't look good for Houston for a while there until they won this weekend. So, no, I still feel really good about Detroit. I think Philly has come together on defense in a way I wasn't expecting, but Detroit's just a dominating team. And I was thinking with all their injuries, they could fade and the Vikings could catch them, and that clearly did not happen. So Lions on that side, it's so hard to ask for or root for the Chiefs just because they've done it so much. Yeah. So I'll say Baltimore right now. I'll say Lions and Ravens, and they're going to rush for about 500 yards in that Super Bowl. But that's what I'd take right now. I'm excited to see what it'll be.
Yeah. Last thing before I let you go, because people are talking about the offensive play callers as the head coach, and then you have Detroit where you have Dan Campbell. But do you want it every season where, all right, where is Ben Johnson going to go somewhere? Is Ben what would you rather have? Would you rather make the move to try to get that young offensive play caller and take that chance? Or do you stay with the quote unquote leader like Dan Campbell, kind of like what we have here, even though Dan doesn't necessarily call the plays, but that's kind of the conundrum that some of these teams are in, like the Buccaneers, right?
Oh yeah. And it's one of those, again, you look at McVay, and McVay looked like McVay on Monday night and dominated. Okay. But my coach of the year vote was Kevin O'Connell. Mm-hmm. And I thought really, 2 weeks ago, they looked really good. And now it's like, oh, okay, well, it's a regular season award. And, that's two times in 3 years, he's had a 12, 13, 14 win team that's bowed out in the first round. So again, it's like you can be a really good offensive mind, and it doesn't necessarily make you a great head coach. O'Connell, if Liam Coen ends up being Kevin O'Connell, that's a great goal for him to be. He's been a very good head coach. I just think to find what's really hard is to find the culture. I think everybody in NFL wants to be Detroit next year. And I think you're going to see Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn both go. And honestly, they could be coordinators that come from underneath both of them. Just because that vibe is there. Nobody in the NFL was better at not only winning, but putting the foot on the neck of your opponent and not letting up. And that's who they are. I don't know if it'll translate to a championship. There's a couple different teams that have never won a Super Bowl that have a real shot here in the next 5 weeks. But no, I think the offense-defense thing, I think there's still a strong tilt to offense, and we're all talking about young offensive coaches and Coen and Johnson and Cliff Kingsbury and other guys like that. I think there's always going to be a tilt in that direction, but there are going to be defensive coaches that win too. I mean, McDermott is still winning in Buffalo as a defensive coach. Harbaugh's a special teams guy. He's still doing okay, not being an offensive guy there in Baltimore. No, I think, again, the trend is still, I don't care if he's 37. He's a smart offensive coach who spent some time with Sean McVay. That's probably not going to change. But I'll be curious to see how these things shake out. These jobs, Jacksonville and Vegas, again, Liam Coen will be right in the thick of things for those. I don't know if he'll go or not. I don't know if they're going to lose front office guys or not. This could be the first year in a long time that they really get hit hard in terms of getting rated and other teams seeing what the Bucs have done for sustained success in the last 5 years and saying, let me borrow some of that. Let me see if I can replicate it in my own franchise.
Well, you know what that means? That means you're doing something right. My guy, Greg Auman, Fox Sports. Greg, thanks so much for joining us, man. I appreciate it. Enjoy a little bit of some time off and have a great rest of your week, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jay. Always happy to be on.
All right, pal. The one and only Greg Auman, Fox Sports. What just a wealth of knowledge talking all things football there. Yeah, Greg's another guy that thinks Todd is going to be back. I think you got to find a way, man. You got to find a way to make this happen and make it work for next season, right? I mean, I want to see Liam back. I do. You get rid of Todd, maybe the defense is worse, right? Like, that's the thing you have to be aware of. Just because you think, all right, get rid of this guy, change is always going to be better. You don't necessarily know that. Ali Abrams, excellent point brought up. Gruden was an established HC when they fired Dungy. We need better talent on defense to match our offense. Our Bucs since the Jameis years are an offensive-led team. Man, appreciate you chiming in, man. That is good. Father Football Gaming, a.k.a. Nick in Sarasota. Wait, you don't put your signature on this one? Would Bugs be better if Todd took a Sirianni-esque chief vibes officer role and gave up control of the defense? All we hear is he's great with the team. Maybe his X's and O's are what holds him back. I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. I know that's tough for some coaches to do, to be able to give that up. Because sometimes that usually means that that's the beginning of the end, right? It's like, all right, well, part of the reason why you're here is to do this. But I'm with you. If that is one of the strengths of the Buccaneers, is that his leadership. But I mean, some people don't like the time management skills. So maybe you say you take the reins from him defensively, and then he can focus more on the clock management stuff. Because we know when it comes to the man management, that's what they call it in soccer, the man management. I mean, Todd does a really good job with that, man. He really does. So I hope so. I hope he stays. I hope Liam stays. I really hope Liam looks at, listen, if Liam gets a certain job, like I don't think him going to the Jaguars makes enough sense. I don't know why you would want to go up there, especially if Trent Baalke's still the GM. I don't know. I just don't. I think you're going to be able to get a different, another job elsewhere. Part of the reason, and I believe this in my heart of hearts, he'll never admit it. Part of the reason that Dave Canales got that job is because I don't know if he thought he did a great job as a play caller offensively. He did it. He's an optimist bully, as Baker said, right? A great guy, unbelievable dude. But I don't know if things would have gotten a lot better this year if the Buccaneers couldn't run the football. Would we have been able to see Bucky Irving be as successful as he was? I don't know. Because you look at the pre-snap motion, you look at all these blocking schemes that were brought in by Liam Coen, and you saw it from training camp. It wasn't something that you had to wait to see until the game situations. I remember sitting there at the Advent Health Training Center at One Buccaneer Place, sitting on the grass, and this was a day when there was no fans there. And I was just watching this team, and I turned to Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report, and I said, this just looks different, right? Like, I'm not making too much of this. I know they're out here in t-shirts and shorts and there's no defenders out there, but just looking at how the offense was executing their plays, looking how guys were getting involved. I mean, you saw Devin Culp making some big catches. You saw running backs swinging out on those wheel routes, making some plays. You saw when they did go up against defenders, guys that weren't making catches that had to be contested all the time, like we saw in the Byron Leftwich days and the Dave Canales days. So you could tell that there was going to be a difference very, very early on in training camp. And I'm just, I'm happy to say that we were able to see that this year, but listen, next year is going to be a completely different ball of wax. All right, it's 1:00 on a Wednesday. He literally just woke up because he was writing all night long. What time did you wake up?
No, I was up early this morning because I filled in for Mish on Power Lunch with Lanelli on the Lightning Audio Network. So
did you pre-record that?
Yeah, we recorded it this morning.
Oh my God, I can't believe this guy.
It comes with the territory.
I can't believe you did that, man. You're a guy that you'll be staying up right until 5 a.m. You wake up at noon, like, I'm here.
Yeah, well, I was up to about 4:30, which it's pretty good for me. So
standard
on a game night, anyway.
You got that right. Erik Erlendsson, lightinginsider.com. You see it right there. Use that promo code JNZ to get $10 off, not just this season, but every recurring season after that. We'll start with the big story of the night. Brayden Point getting scratched for missing a team meeting. This is not something that you usually see from Pointer, Eric, but it's a no-nonsense, zero-sum type of discipline that John Cooper and this coaching staff have. You do something like this, you're not playing.
Yeah, and it's actually the second time it's happened to Brayden. He did it back in the 18-19 season as well. Valtteri Filppula was also sat out a game for missing a team meeting back in 2017. So it's a team rule. It's been in place since John Cooper has been here. You miss a meeting, you don't play. And I certainly saw a couple of people show up on my mentions last night saying, what are you doing? Why are you scratching Brayden Point? This is an important game. It's the Bruins. Why not scratch them against Anaheim? That's not the way it works. You violate that rule, you get disciplined immediately, right. And some people said, hey, why not sit him for a period? And then he plays the second and third period. Now that's actually hurts your team worse because you're going to play a forward short for a period. It's just the rule. And look, Brayden has mentioned before, like he's a heavy sleeper.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know if this was the case this time around. I assume it is because this is what happened last time. Sometimes he sleeps through his alarms. And, we know how busy the Lightning have been for the past few weeks with the number of games and all the back-to-backs. And, I'm guessing he just slept through an alarm and missed a meeting. And, that's the price you got to pay. Nobody is above the team. We know that, especially in hockey. And it doesn't matter your role on the team. If you're not going to be there with your teammates, then this is going to happen, and it did.
Any concern about this, kind of leaking forward, or is this just kind of going to be a one-time thing?
No, there's no concern about it. I mean, it's not the first time it's happened with Pointer, but it's not a common thing, right? Certainly we hear about it when it happens. Maybe we don't hear about it if it does happen, but just knowing Cooper and the way that, he kind of runs the locker room and the personnel and everything, it won't be an issue. And, I think somebody's actually already started a GoFundMe page to set up a bunch of Brayden Point alarm clocks.
I like that. Unfortunately, the team takes a loss last night in Boston. And I want to talk about the guy who made his debut last night, in Jack Finley. What'd you think of the young 6'6" centerman there? And he's already been sent down to the AHL, but what'd you think of his cup of coffee there with the Bolts?
Moves well for a guy his size, at 6'6". He's still rusty. Like, he missed all the training camp in the first 3 months of the year, coming off of a couple of surgeries, including shoulder surgery. So it's been a long road for him to get back. He didn't even get back to Syracuse's lineup until the week before Christmas. So he's only been back in action for a few weeks. So, for him to kind of step into a game like that against the Bruins and that atmosphere, I mean, even talked about it. He's not used to seeing that many people looking at him, especially he does the rookie lap out there by himself, the tradition. I thought he handled himself well. He's obviously, he's got the big size. They threw him out there for a couple of third period faceoffs, test him, see what he looks like. How does he handle it? Ended up winning 3 of his 5 faceoffs last night, about just under 9 minutes of ice time on 15 shifts. So, if sometimes when a player in his situation comes in and they're quiet, that's not a bad thing. And I thought that in a lot of ways he made some noise, right? Like he had a hit at one point. It was a little late after the whistle, but he delivered the hit and, made his presence felt. He had a good scoring chance right in front of the net off of a sneaky little pass by Cam Atkinson. At one point, he was out on the ice for Connor Geeky's goal that made it 4-1. So, for his first game, I thought that he established himself well. We'll see if he's back up for tomorrow's game because I don't think they're going to go into this game with 12 forwards. I'm pretty sure they'll call somebody back up, and maybe it'll be him before tomorrow night's game in Anaheim. But overall, not a bad debut for Jack Finley.
Now, why would you, and to some of our people just listening for the first time, why would you send him down and then call him back up?
Salary cap purposes. The way that the salary cap works in the NHL, it's accumulated on a daily basis. So the more money you save early in the season, the more available cap space you're going to have once you get closer to the trade deadline. So, this is one of the big reasons why with J.J. Moser's injury, even knowing it was a 6 to 8 to 10 week injury recovery for J.J. Moser, it's why they haven't called up another defenseman, because they're trying to accumulate as much cap space as they can, because they're not an LTI this year, long-term injury pool relief. The last few years they've had it with that Brent Seabrook contract that they had that was, Seabrook wasn't officially retired, but he was injured. He wasn't going to play. That put them into a LTI pool. It's not a good place to be, and I don't want to get deep into those weeds because it's very convoluted trying to explain how LTI works. But teams don't look to go into LTI. They want to stay below the salary cap ceiling and accumulate space. So if you save a day's worth of salary cap on Jack Finley, well, that's a little bit more money that you have moving forward. And whether it's Finley or maybe it's even Gonsalves coming back up, whoever it is, I expect that we'll see somebody called up and brought up to the team before tomorrow's game against Anaheim.
So you're saying, like, for what his daily contract would be, let's say it's like, how much would that be?
His rookie deal, I don't know, he's probably making $850. So whatever that percentage is of the whatever days in the NHL season, the best way to describe how the salary cap works is imagine you walk into your door every day, you come home from work and you throw some money into a jar. That you only have so much that you can fill up that jar. And the less you come home with, the more you have to fill that up later in the year. So that's exactly how the cap works. So even saving 1 day's worth of salary cap, whatever it is, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $50,000, whatever that percentage is, and I'm really bad at math, so I'm not going to try and do that. But whatever little bit you save now, you accumulate it. Right, so you accumulate cap space throughout the entire course of the regular season to remain cap compliant. And then if you want to have that extra space for moves at the trade deadline, this is one of the ways that GMs in today's salary cap era are able to do that.
And that's something that Julian really prides himself in, right? This is one of his strengths. So let's say we do get the trade deadline, be here before you know it. What positions do you think that the Lightning will address at the deadline?
I think they need a middle six forward, similar to Anthony Duclair last year. Duclair was more of a top six guy. I think they could use a middle six guy that, preferably maybe a winger that you could play with Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel. I mean, that's been the third guy on that line has been, it's been Connor Geeky, it's been Nick Paul, it's been a bunch of different guys throughout, the course of the first half of the regular season, but they haven't found somebody to stick there continuously, right, to consistently. And I think that Geeky has that potential, but he's still just 20 years old and he's still finding his way through an NHL schedule, an NHL season. He's played well. I thought he responded to being scratched the game before and then coming back last night and getting the goal. So that's the biggest area I would look at. I think they're quote unquote fourth line. Obviously, Glendening and Gergensons are going to be two of them, and then whether it's Asamoah, whether it's Chafee, no matter who they, put in that situation, I think they're fine with the fourth line. That's why I think they could use somebody that could, kind of move between a second and a third line role, depending on what you kind of need. And then after that, depth defense, is it a right-hand shot? I mean, I'm slightly surprised we haven't seen Max Crozier called up to this point after the way he played in the second half of last year and, the chemistry that he has with Emil Lilleberg. Again, probably for salary cap purposes might be a big reason. I know Crozier did miss some time an injury in the middle part of Syracuse this season, but he is back. So those are the two areas that if I were in the GM's chair, I'd be looking at to improve with this team.
That's the thing too. Crozier come because I just look at Perbix and Radish, and you wonder, like, if Crozier would, move up, one of those guys you could possibly use in a trade, which one of those two guys would more likely be on the move?
That's a good question. They both make about the same money. Their salary cap hits are the same. Radish has more offense to his game. I mean, you had the stat the other night, right? The quickest defenseman in Lightning history to 50 points, which is probably going to surprise me when I saw that stat, as well as some of the players, defensemen that they've had come into their team. So I guess it just depends. Perbix is younger, right? He's a couple of years younger than Darren Radish, plays a different style of game. He's more of a bottom pairing, steady, can add some offense. He's more of a two-way kind of guy. I guess it would just depend on what other teams are looking for. But, if you were to handicap one over the other, I'd say Perbix is probably maybe a tick higher on maybe somebody else's depth chart.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves Julian makes, because you have some good talent on this team. Like, where do you see this team as far as where they stack up in the NHL? Because you and I, we both don't just watch the Lightning, we watch these other teams. And, man, one move, you have the top-end talent. You have a guy like Victor Hedman. You have Vasilevsky. Like, I truly believe if they hit a home run on one of these moves where they bring in one or two guys and they really settle in, because I think that's one of the things we talk about this team winning back-to-back cups. One of the biggest reasons why was everybody was slotted into the perfect spot. There was never, like, you had guys, we joked about putting it in the blender, but you knew what the lines were, right? You knew who Stammer was playing with. You knew who Point was playing with and Cooch, and you knew what that third line was going to be. You knew the fourth line was going to be Maroon and Belmar and probably like a Ross Colton or a Matthew Joseph. Like, there wasn't too much mystery. And I firmly believe that, I know there's been some inconsistency this year, but they're better defensively. And Eric, if they make that one move, that just like that perfect guy, like you said, that could be a middle six guy. Hey, if he wants to moonlight on that first line every once in a while, like we saw with Duclair, we'll take that too. But man, is it just me, or does it feel like this team is really one move away from being like, all right, you guys can be a real contender here?
Maybe two moves, but maybe the two that I mentioned, because I don't know. I don't feel totally comfortable with Littleberg and Perbix as a consistent pair. I know they've been together quite a bit, especially since the Moser injury, but I don't know. It just, you look at some of the games and some of the mistakes that have happened. It's been with one of those with that pairing on the ice. So I think they could shore up that area maybe a little bit too. But I mean, you're right in the sense that you look at the Eastern Conference. I mean, tell me who's a dominant team in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
There isn't one, right? There isn't one. New Jersey, really good team, but they've had their stretches where they haven't good. They went out to California and got swept by those three California teams as well, just like the Lightning did. And, the Rangers started off hot and now they're a hot mess, right? Like it's just, there's nobody. I think
they're getting better.
I think I even saw a stat that, the winner of the Atlantic Division is on pace to finish with under 100 points.
That's wild to think.
Right? Like, you think about how strong the Atlantic has been. Now, part of that is due to the fact that Detroit is better this year. Ottawa is better this year. Montreal has kind of gotten really good here of late. So those teams are harder. They're harder to get points from. So that kind of brings the pack closer together. So there's not as much separation and gap as there has been in the past number of years, where it's really been the four teams and everybody else. So that's part of that equation. But I think the Eastern Conference is wide open. So I think this year of any year, the trade deadline is going to factor into who comes out of the East. I think whoever finds the best fit, the best deal, once you get to March, that can kind of boost your team, I think they're going to have an edge once you get into the postseason, because there is no team this year that you can sit there and say in the Eastern Conference is by far the favorite to come out.
Do you think that this year, more than others, it's important to get the top seed in the Atlantic? And what do you make of the Lightning's play with their record being so poor as it is in the division?
Yeah. Well, they've got some more division games coming up, so we'll get a little bit of a larger sample size there. And once they get out of this stretch of games that they're right in the middle of right now, they're playing 16 games in 29 days. There's a lot of back-to-backs that are in here, including 2 more coming up next week on the road. So once this team gets past that stretch and kind of settles into more of a normal routine a little bit with games kind of basically every other day, right. We'll get a better feel for what they're capable of doing, because we've seen it. I mean, December, when they didn't have this kind of a schedule, they were really good, right? And now they haven't been. And look, the schedule is not an excuse. Everybody deals with the schedule. It's not a crutch. I'm not trying to give them a crutch to lean on, but it is reality that, especially with this past few couple of weeks where they've had to chase games because they've been giving up the first goal, you have to expend a lot of energy. Your top guys are playing a little bit more on what is already a condensed schedule this month. So that does definitely factor into things. So look, the Leafs are within striking range. The Lightning still have games in hand on everybody.
Right.
Like even playing the Bruins last night, they still have 4 games in hand on the Bruins. So again, compressed schedule, but an opportunity to make up some ground and put themselves into that equation. I would think that getting first in the Atlantic factors in only because you'll get a wild card team, right? You won't get a Toronto. You won't get a Florida. You probably won't get a Florida or a Toronto, because somebody has to finish first, second, and third in the division. So that means you're going to get a Detroit, an Ottawa team, a Montreal team that, maybe you feel better. Yeah. Like I said, it's wide open. So, right. So I think this year, I think first in the Atlantic might be better than maybe it was in 2019 when Tampa Bay had to face Columbus, which was a very hard-working, bad matchup team for Tampa Bay that year, obviously.
I don't remember what happened that year. I've already burned that out of my brain.
I think a lot of people have kind of forgot about that.
Connor Geeky, you mentioned him, and I brought him up last week, and I brought him up to anybody that would listen, and I want to see more from the kid. And he was a healthy scratch, comes back, scores a goal, which was good. I thought he asserted himself a little bit better last night. Why the healthy scratch? And, what do you think we're going to see from him now that gives you some belief after watching last night's game that he can turn it around a little bit?
Well, first, I don't know how healthy his shoulder is, right? He took that stumble into the end boards on the 22nd against Florida, missed the game on the 23rd. We know what hockey players will go through to make sure they stay on the ice. So he's probably healthy enough to play. Doesn't mean he's necessarily healthy. But having said that, he was a healthy scratch the other night in Pittsburgh. And it's never a bad thing for a 20-year-old in his first year in the NHL, making the jump from junior to the NHL to maybe just get a different perspective on the game.
Right.
We said Steven Stamkos went through this, right? He sat out a couple of games in January as well, because it's the midpoint of the season. It's the sled dog days, as our good friend Martin Fennelly used to call them. In hockey, you kind of get to this point of the season. It's a little bit tougher to get up for games and to have that same type of energy that you had in October and that you're going to need in March and April. So it's never a bad idea to just maybe get a different perspective, go over things, look at things from a different level, talk to the assistant coaches while this is happening, and just get a different perspective. And it's a little bit of a reset, a reset mindset. Is what it kind of does, and gives you a different, because players will tell you that when they're first coming up to the NHL, unless you're an elite player, unless you're Connor Bedard or somebody like that, the game has to slow down for you, because you're going 100 miles an hour trying to keep up with the pace of the NHL. And sometimes that speeds the game up too much for you. You have to slow the game down. And sometimes getting that perspective from above helps slow the game down and realize, okay, I had an extra second here to make a play. I didn't have to rush that. So I'll remember that when I get onto the ice. And look, a second doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's a lot of time at the rate of speed that you have to think and look at the game from ice level in the NHL. So the way that he responded and, got himself involved a little bit and got to the net. I mean, that's the big thing. He's a big body. He got to that front of the net, was able to get a stick on that shot from Victor Hedman and deflect it past Jeremy Swayman. So those are the things that you look for. How does a player respond to that? And I think he did. look, he still has to add muscle to his frame. He's a big kid. He's only going to get stronger and bigger over the next couple of years. And by the time he's 23, 24 years old, he's going to be a much different player than he is now. Doesn't help you right now, but I think the way that he responded last night kind of gives you some understanding that he knows why he was scratched. It wasn't a punishment. That's the big thing that you have to look for. It's not a punishment that he was scratched. It's just a reset. Let's give you a second here to kind of catch your breath and just get a different perspective on things.
Doubly, the Four Nations face-off is in a couple weeks. Do you think it's a positive that guys like Vasilevsky and Kucherov are not playing because it'll give him some time off when some of the other elite players in the league are going to be playing in a tournament that, maybe on the outside people may think it may not mean a lot, but once those guys hit the ice, I mean, they're not going to be half-assing it.
Oh, no. This is full bore. Especially you look at a team like Florida where they have 7 guys that are taking part in the tournament, which is good for them in terms of the type of players that they have. But, they certainly are going to be playing extra heavy minutes. So these are going to be highly competitive games in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I mean, for Vazzy in particular and for Nikita Kucherov, who plays heavy minutes and everything else, it can never hurt to be able to kind of get that extra rest that you're not normally going to get, because we know if this was an Olympic year, well, I guess not right now because Russia's going to be banned from the Olympics as well next year, unless something drastically changes over the next 10 months or so. It's high leverage hockey, and to kind of just take a step away and, I'm sure they'll go to the Caribbean or somewhere where it's nice and warm this time of year and spend some time at the beach and just kind of get away from the mental grind. It's not always the physical, and it is in terms of the bumps and bruises we know guys have, but it's more so the mental grind that players kind of have to go through. And, these breaks are more about mental rest than they are physical rest. So it certainly can't hurt that some of their top guys are not going to be participating, and they have the opportunity. Ryan McDonough, who you thought maybe he'd be on Team USA because he has been in the past, and they could use some experience back there, but he's going to get some opportunity to rest in the minutes that he plays. And poor guy took another puck to the face last night and didn't come back. So rest is a weapon, as Guy Boucher used to tell me.
It's funny that McDonough was clearing a puck last night and Pasternak moved real quick. And I was like, oh, that was so funny. He just didn't want to get hit in the face. And then later on in the game, Pasternak hit him in the face. And knowing that he's such a good guy, he definitely didn't do that on purpose. And he was like,
no.
Oh, my God, it was awful. Before I let you go, give us an update on J.J. Moser. I know it was great to see him out there with the team at the end of morning skate, but it'll probably be a little while before we see him back, correct?
Yeah, I remember it was an 8 to 10 week injury, happened in the beginning of December. So the 8 to 10 week range puts you right around the first or second week of February. And what happens the second and third week of February? The league goes into a break. Positive sign to see him out on the ice. Wasn't a full participant out there. Was working primarily with assistant coach Jeff Halpern and kind of going through some things just to test the leg and the mobility and everything, and kind of slowly working his way back. Is there a chance we could see him before the Four Nations face-off? Yeah, there's a chance. I don't expect it though, unless he really kind of works his way back and gets himself ready, because the extra rest in his situation wouldn't be a bad thing, right? Like that would give you an extra 2 weeks to re-strengthen or, whatever it is he's dealing with. I assume it's some sort of a sprain or some sort of a muscle strain in the leg. They just call it a lower body injury. So positive to see him out there. But if anybody thinks that Moser's coming back in the next couple of weeks, I wouldn't expect it.
I am with you. Erik_Erlendsson on Twitter /X. That's a K, not a C. 2 S's after the D. LightningInsider.com. You see it right there. Use that promo code JNC. Get $10 off, not just this season, but every recurring season after that. He joins us every Wednesday here at 1 o'clock on the Recher podcast. Double E, appreciate you, my brother. Go get some rest. Get a nap in for you. And I'll see you tomorrow night at the arena, my friends.
I got soccer this afternoon, so there's no rest for the weary, man.
Oh, my gosh. Good thing the Lightning are off tonight. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. Be well.
All right, man. The one and only Erik Erlendsson, LightningInsider.com today. It's a good gift, too. Good gift idea for your favorite Lightning fans out there. LightningInsider.com. Shout out to Sergio. Jay, your podcast is the best, brother. Keep it up. It beats the national stuff on DAE. no taking shots here on DAE. I got a lot of love for everybody over there and very grateful for my time, but I appreciate it. Richie P checking in USF Bulls tonight. By the way, got my shirts from For the Bay. Go check out my friends at For the Bay. They always have some great stuff going on there. Dave and the crew. He sent me a shirt. I actually got to go check the mail. I got one of those like public mailboxes over there. I got to check and see if he sent me a shirt as well. So Richie, glad you're able to do that. What are you guys doing tonight? What are you up to tonight here in the Tampa Bay area? Questions, comments, concerns, leave them there at the bottom. I will be there at the Yuengling Center tonight. And if you go to gousfbulls.com, that's where I always go to get my information when it comes to all things South Florida. Tonight, 7 p.m. at the Yuengling Center, the USF men's basketball team takes on UAB after the women unfortunately fell to UAB yesterday. The men try to get back that dub. And it's been tough, man. When you look at the last couple of days, we unfortunately had to deal with the Buccaneers losing on Sunday night. We had to deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning losing last night, the USF men's basketball team or women's basketball team losing. So we need a dub. We need a win here in the Tampa Bay area. So hopefully the USF men can give us that tonight. Follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe. Kill that like button. Hit that subscription as well. Ren, he's doing laundry and cooking. What's on the menu tonight, Ren? What is on the menu? I am a big TV in the background kind of guy, whatever show it may be. Right now, my shows are Ink Master. You guys ever watch Ink Master? I have 0 tattoos. None. No tattoos. I don't know if I ever really wanted one, but no tattoos for me. But Ink Master is something that I love. I think it's one of the best shows. I think it's kind of weird that they got rid of the judges. They brought in a new crew. But yeah, I'm having a good time. I've watched, I think, all 14 seasons. So big Ink Master fan. And Suits. But Suits isn't a show that you put on in the background. Suits is something that me and my girlfriend watch. Gotta love Suits, man. If you've never put it on, it's one of those shows where you'll like in the first 5 minutes. That's me. I can't watch a show, and we tried to watch Parks and Recreation, and it is funny. It does have its moments. But Parks and Rec, you don't really get until like the 4th episode. And I'm an Office fan, so I thought it would be easier for me to like Parks and Rec, but I just could not I just couldn't really grasp onto it. And again, I ended up liking it, but I wouldn't say I love it. But Suits right off the rip, man. What a good show. And maybe you should cook like Ren is. Mojo pork with red beans. Watch out. Ren, you'll see Ren on the next season of Master Chef or Hell's Kitchen. Go check him out there. And the other big news around, and this is the thing, when we're doing stuff like the Jay Recher podcast, it's kind of hard to keep an idea of the rest of the news that's going on. Tristan Jarry placed on waivers from the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was signed to a 5-year extension in July 2023 from general manager Kyle Dubas. And listen, this is a guy, he's been their goalie for the last, 4 years? But now they're moving on, and they're going to go with Joel Blomqvist, the rookie, and veteran Alex Nedeljkovic, who we remember him from his time with Carolina. I believe he was with Detroit as well. Wow. Pittsburgh entering play tonight, trailing Columbus by 4 points for the final wild card spot in the East. Pittsburgh is one of those teams where this is what happens. This is what happens in sports when you are that good. For such a long time, you have 2 centers in Crosby and Malkin, and you have Chris Letang on defense. Sometimes, your number's up, and that's it. We saw it with the Red Wings, where Yzerman, Fedorov, those guys retire, and then Datsuk and Zetterberg, they try to carry it on. Eventually, when those guys retire, you got to go in the shitter, man. Just the way it goes. And that's where I think we saw it with Chicago Blackhawks. So the kind of LA Kings did a better job of staying afloat. And hell, Kopitar's still playing, but I feel like Pittsburgh is on the precipice of that now. They're on the precipice of just really Crosby and Malkin don't have many years left. They're battling for wild card spots every year. And I don't know if they're going to win playoff rounds, but man, and now you get rid of Jarry. So, I mean, all right, you're banking on another veteran that he's a journeyman in Nedeljkovic, and you're really trusting the rookie Blomqvist. I don't know. I don't think that's a team to worry about in the East. David Terry, my main man, Jaybird, all the way from Manchester, England, coming back tomorrow to watch some well-deserved wins. You got that right, Man U tomorrow against Southampton. Richie P, bro, you should check out Landman. That is with Billy Bob Thornton. I agree, or I saw. I got to check that out. That one looked like a good one as well. Buccaneers, Arthur Smith just completed his interview with the Bears, and McCarthy on deck got the private treatment flown into Hallis Hall and all. I think that's going to be their guy. They're looking for stability. They're looking for a guy that's been that's worked with quarterbacks. He's worked with Dak. He's worked with Aaron Rodgers. He'll be a calming voice for Caleb Williams. I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of weird though, right? You're talking about the Green Bay Packers guy with the Bears. That's going to be interesting the first time he goes to Lambeau Field. I don't get the Arthur Smith thing. I don't. You saw what he was able to do in Atlanta, and it wasn't great. I mean, did he really knock anybody's socks off by what he did this year with the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't know. I don't know at all. It's weird, man. It's weird that there's these retreads at the offensive coordinator spot, at the head coaching position, when you know that guys just don't do the job. They're just not good enough. I don't know, man. It's kind of funky. It's kind of funky. So we'll see how it works out. Our guy Marc Ryan is going to join us. I just realized that I said 1:30 p.m. We'll take 1:30 tomorrow, about 15 minutes. 1:30 Eastern. I hope I didn't mess him up because he's in Detroit. So I hope I didn't screw him up. I hope he's not busy. Corey Graves, a work or real? Starting to think it's real. This is the Buccaneers podcast. For most of you that don't know, Corey Graves is a commentator with the WWE, and they went in a different direction when it came to the broadcast teams for Raw and for SmackDown. For Raw, it's going to be Michael Cole and Pat McAfee. Now that they're on Netflix, on SmackDown, it's going to be Joe Tessitore, who I think has done an exemplary job since joining the WWE, and Wade Barrett. So I just want to make sure that Mark knows that I hope I didn't screw him up and lead him to believe that I was talking about Central Time, not Eastern Standard Time. But I think it's real. I think it's a shoot, Buccaneers. I think Corey's pissed. He's pissed at his situation because the doctors say he can't wrestle anymore because of the injuries that he sustained. And he's been the guy that's been the good soldier, right? He'll go to SmackDown. He'll go to Raw. He'll do some stuff with NXT. He'll do the pre-show. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, he'll find a way. He's been more of a heel type of Jerry the King Lawler, Bobby the Brain Heenan heel type of commentator where he's rooting for the bad guys and saying all these off-color things. And then he's been a little bit more laid back, and he's kind of been a jack of all trades. He's been a chameleon for the WWE, and now he's looking at situations where guys are more popular than him and bigger names than him. Listen, I'm sorry. I think Corey Graves does a good job, but I mean, he's not Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee is one of the most popular people in sports right now. He's got a big time show. He's on ESPN. He does college stuff. He does stuff with WWE. He gets in the ring. Like, he does a little bit of everything, and he's fun. Whatever he does, whatever he's a part of, it's been successful the last decade or so. So, I mean, if that means that Corey Graves is going to get bumped down to NXT with Vic Joseph and Booker T, like, so be it. So be it. If you're that upset, then go to AEW or go somewhere else, or just your play to crow and move, and just, you got to be better. You got to do something. You got to shake the apple tree. You got to disrupt the apple cart, whatever the saying is. Like, you have to do something. I get it. And I'm in a perfect position to talk about this, right? I could have sat there after getting let go of iHeart and bitched and moaned. I do this better than this guy. I do that. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. A decision was made. You could take to social media and get all mad about it. Oh my God, woe is me. Oh man, there are more people are more popular than me. If it's a work, hey, it's a work, whatever. It's part of the gig. If it's a shoot, if it's how you really feel, do something about it. Do something about it. You had an opportunity doing the After the Bell podcast. I thought that was really good. I didn't think that you did the greatest job of promoting it. Could there be things you do outside of your weekly endeavor with WWE to help you? Maybe. Expand your horizons. Do some different things. Make it so you're undeniable. Cody Rhodes says it the best. Be undeniable. I have no sympathy for people that don't want to take their next step into trying to expand what they're doing to try to make a better life for themselves and their loved ones. If people make a decision that you don't like, fine. But if you're going to bitch about it and you're going to let it ruin your day and you're going to paint this picture of woe is me, everybody feel bad for me, I'm sorry. There's a lot more people out there dealing with a whole hell of a lot worse than what you're dealing with. You still work for the WWE. I would love to work for the WWE. I would freaking mop the goddamn floors at the World Wrestling Entertainment warehouse to be a part of them, just to be a small part, social media, backstage, whatever. You slam me through a table every freaking night. I would love to be a part of the WWE. You want things to change with your situation? You take it. You take the bull by the horns. You do it. I got no sympathy for him. None. I would love to work for the WWE. I'd love to be a commentator. Put me on Monday Night Raw. Shit. Man. Bitching and moaning about things. I hope it's a work. I do. Because if it's a shoot, it's like, come on, man. Come on. Let's be realistic here. All right, we're going to talk we're going to go, and I would say behind enemy lines, but this guy's never an enemy. He's a friend. The one and only Marc Ryan from 97 won the ticket. I'm glad that you were able to go back across the border from Canada. I just saw your post. Tell us, before we get into Detroit sports, what the heck happened there, and are you okay?
Jay, by the way, man, I apologize. I had something coming up for a few minutes that held me back. So work related, but no. So a week ago, I have been tempted because, can you believe it? Canada is south of where we are here. Okay, so like, how does that make any sense, right? But Canada is south, and I am in a suburb called Novi, and of Detroit, and it's beautiful here, Jay. And right now, it's like a winter wonderland. This Floridian is a little bit, fish out of water, but so I've been like, Canada is closer to Detroit than I am.
Oh my
but
God.
I wanted to go visit. So last Wednesday, I get in the car. I got my passport, got everything I need, ready to go, cross over what's called the Ambassador Bridge, and it really kicked my asseter. So I get over there, Jay, and the first question, like, I just expected to drive right over. I don't know what I was thinking, but it wasn't this.
Right.
Okay. And the first question is, what are you going to do here? Whatever I want. Whatever. That was apparently the wrong answer. Okay?
Oh no.
That was apparently the wrong answer. How long are you going to be here? What is time among friends?
Oh boy.
These were not the right answers. Jeff.
No.
The next thing I know, I'm in this other area where I'm strip searched and they're folding down all my car seats. And
gosh.
like, what is this? What is this? What is this? There's nothing in my car that's a problem. And then after that, I'm 45 minutes inside this place that looks like a DMV while they're running a background check on me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm told that I made what should be a 1-minute process over 1 hour. Okay, to get in this. But dude, I gotta be. I listen. You live and learn, man. You live and learn. How was I supposed to know that what is time among friends was not the right answer? How am I supposed to be aware of that?
You answered it like only Marc Ryan could answer it, and they just did not get it.
They
did
were not down.
get it.
They were not down. They were not down. It's got along like a oil and water, man.
You got that right. Well, you know what is getting along a lot better is the Detroit Lions in the National Football League. They have been incredible this year, even sustaining all those injuries, Mark. They get a nice week off, but man, just tell us, what are the vibes right now there in the Motor City as you inch closer to this playoff game this weekend?
Jay, I've never seen anything like it. And there are areas where I think this city is just bursting at the seams. There is area where the city needs to check itself. Jay, I welcome being in hot water. I welcomed it with my Canadian friends at the border, and I'm happy to welcome it here. But one of the first things I saw when I moved here was the Detroit. They had put up a massive banner on a big building downtown. The banner covered the whole building, and it said 2023 NFC North champs. And I looked at it and I was driving by and I'm like, could you have a bigger advertisement that you've never won anything than like a building site? Because the banner would be the same size if they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
So like you just announced that you haven't won anything. How about try the Barry Sanders approach? You know him here, right? The Barry Sanders approach, they know him here, who handed the ball to the official and he acted like he'd been there before even when he hadn't. Jay, I'm still going to stores here and I'm still seeing this year, I'm seeing 2024 North Division champs sweatshirts. And I'm like, what are we doing? You're the champion of 4, you know, like Jay, we don't buy division championship shirts in Tampa Bay.
Right.
We don't buy division championship shirts here. Winning a division is what you're supposed to do. You don't get flowers for what you're supposed to do. But these people are so amped. They're so into their team. The get-in price for this game against Washington is going to be the highest price of any wild card or any divisional round game in NFL history. These people are devoted to the nth degree, and to be able to be a part of it, man, like I'm on the Detroit Lions network, and I get to do their pregame and halftime and postgame all over the state of Michigan. It's been a real dream come true, man.
That's awesome, and I'm so happy for your success. And
thank you, brother.
To speak on that, I have a Lightning Eastern Conference Championship T-shirt that they delivered to us, and I was just like, "This is a weird shirt," and I wear it because it's so comfortable. And every single time I look at it, I go, "This is just a weird shirt to have." Like it's such a weird thing to.
But imagine this. Imagine like it's one thing. It's like, okay, if your, moral victory is that you have a shirt that says you went to the Stanley Cup final. Now compare that to them selling division championship shirts and division banners. It's just like you have now announced for anyone driving through your city that you are the losingest city of all time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the way it goes.
But things are better now. So it looks like things are going to change because, man, the baseball team with an incredible run. The basketball team beat my Knicks the other night at MSG. The Red Wings, I want to ask you about them in a second. So, I mean, things are looking up. I think it's the Marc
Ryan effect.
It's the Marc Ryan effect. I've been saying that for weeks.
Happens,
It's a beautiful thing, man. It really is. Tell us how the fan base is kind of dealing with the expectation that Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn will likely not be with the team next year.
About as well as a punch to the playmakers. That is to say, Jay, not well at all. Aaron Glenn was an absolute mastermind in devising the plan to take out Minnesota. Then you saw the Los Angeles Rams utilize that plan. Now, what is that plan? They doubled Justin Jefferson high-low. They doubled Jordan Addison inside out. Whenever Minnesota was in the red zone, they ran man on the outside and zone in the middle. So Minnesota likes to run these crossing routes, when they get down to the goal line. They had man coverage on the outside, zone in the middle. And the combination of those three things, mixing in a few defensive line stunts, totally had Minnesota flummoxed. Completely had Minnesota flummoxed. And that resulted in 2 blowouts. Sam Darnold couldn't hack it, couldn't handle it. And you have the first time in NFL history that a team with 14 wins went home in the wild card round.
It's wild, man. It's wild. And to be able to watch Detroit do their thing. And even with all the injuries, Mark, I mean, what's been the most successful, like the most impressive thing about this Detroit team overcoming these injuries? What position, how they've been able to rally around? I mean, it's just from afar, it's just amazing that they're still playing as well as they are with all those guys on the IR.
Right. And so I know you asked about the coordinators, and Ben Johnson has a different trick play every single game. And it's something that you've never seen before, whether it's Jared Goff stumbling around, looking like he fumbled the snap against Green Bay and then throwing a touchdown pass, to like hook and ladders that are generally considered way too risky to run in an NFL game. They're doing different things all the time. But to the question you just asked, in life, isn't it interesting? We have reasons and we have excuses. And San Francisco pulling the injury card really does feel like an excuse when you consider that Detroit on defense has lost 108 games to starters this year, by far the most in the NFL. San Francisco is at 80. Detroit has lost 22 players of its 53-man roster. Think about that for a minute, okay? They've lost 42% of their 53-man roster, and they finished 15-2. Okay, so what is your excuse? What is anybody's excuse? Detroit doesn't want to hear anybody's excuses, okay? Because of what they've had to do and what they've had to overcome. Now, you're sitting here in the playoffs, and you're looking at the fact that David Montgomery is going to play, but what David Montgomery are you going to be getting? Right. You know, you're going to be without Carlton Davis, a predicament that you guys are familiar with. You know, and you're going to be without Aiden Hutchinson. At one point, you lost 10 different defensive linemen this year. Jay, the vast majority of teams don't have 10 different defensive linemen on the roster.
Right.
So what they have overcome is a miracle. It's a miracle, and it's a testament to what Dan Campbell has built here from a cultural standpoint.
Any chance Aiden Hutchinson comes back at some point?
Okay. Then the question is it smart for Aiden Hutchinson to come back?
Right.
Jay, how would you run this? Here, if I'm Aiden, here's what I do. I acknowledge it's not smart for me to be coming back. It's not smart for me to tell the Canadian border agent, how long am I going to be here? What is time among friends? That's probably not a smart thing to say. I would play if I'm Aiden Hutchinson.
Right.
Because when do you ever know if you're going to be back in this place? If you're protecting yourself from injury now, what are you protecting yourself from exactly? You know, if it's just about money, brother, there's more important things than that. And so Aiden Hutchinson is targeting an attempt to come back in the Super Bowl. Is it wise? Absolutely not. Would I do it? Absolutely. You know, it's one of those.
I'm with you.
It's one of those. Yes, I'm absolutely going to play.
Yeah, shaking your head one way and actually the things coming out of your mouth is the complete opposite. I am with you. Yeah, because you're right. And I worry about it too. You see the Philadelphia Eagles 2 years ago, they go to the Super Bowl. They lose both their coordinators. Steichen goes to the Colts. Gannon goes to the Cardinals. And then last year, they're just an absolute mess. Still got a bunch of good players, but the Buccaneers beat them in the playoffs, and going into this season, didn't know where they were. They were able to get back on the horse, right? Same thing with Detroit. Like, I look at them going, yeah, I mean, you got to make the most of this opportunity, regardless of who's out, because you're probably going to lose both of your coordinators. And it's just natural that your team goes through a time of change because those guys have been so impactful. They've been so freaking good for this team. Give me an under the radar type of thing to keep an eye on this weekend in their playoff game that, you know, maybe the national media really isn't talking about.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Jay. You know, to me, I saw a lot of things in that Washington game, and I'm not sure how you felt about it. I felt like the Bucs were the better team. I felt like Tampa Bay wins that game 7 out of 10 times.
Right.
I couldn't believe, and Dan Campbell's known. When I'm critical of Dan Campbell, Jay, it's when he's reckless over aggressive. There's a difference between aggressive and reckless. There's a difference between reasons and excuses. I thought Dan Quinn was incredibly reckless. You know, the 2 field goals give them the lead. They're going for every 4th down possible when they're down there. They got lucky on the last touchdown pass. They got lucky on the field goal. They're in shotgun from the 1 yard line 4 different times. The hell are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, like there were so many things that I saw in that game that told me Washington is not a Super Bowl contender. Washington is not ready. You're going to see an attempt to confuse, and I would expect Detroit to try to do everything they could to keep Terry McLaurin covered and to confuse Jaden Daniels, whether that's a mix of zone coverages, whether that's a myriad of defensive line stunts. Ifeatu Melifonwu is a blitz demon of a safety. I know Rondé Barber was a corner, but he reminds me of Rondé Barber in terms of what he does off of the edge there. And And so what you're going to get is a plan for the only way the Commanders win this game is to outscore Detroit. And Detroit is going to attempt to be confusing defensively as much as possible to overcome the shortcomings because they have practice squad players starting at certain positions.
So and the confidence level's got to be pretty high for a lot of people in Detroit going against. I know I said a rookie quarterback last week. I thought he played pretty well. I didn't look like a rookie quarterback going against the Todd Bowles defense, but I'm sure there's a lot of optimism and a lot of belief that Detroit, if they just take care of business, they'll be able to come out on top against Jaden in Washington.
I asked everybody here, who do you want to play? There were 4 options of who they could play. Mm-hmm. Here was the vote, Jay. Minnesota, 7%. Los Angeles Rams, 9%. Green Bay Packers, 26%. Washington Commanders, 56%.
Wow.
That's who they wanted to play. They got who they wanted, Mm-hmm. And I am not trying to sound overconfident at all. I don't think Washington can win this game. I don't think this is a winnable game for them. And I understand it's the NFL. Mm-hmm. Bigger upsets have happened. You see 9.5-point upsets all the time. This environment, this game, I don't think this is a winnable game. Had they been playing Minnesota again, I would have said, I'm really concerned. This is the 3rd time. There's no way Minnesota plays that poorly again. But Washington, a team that is playing with house money, is well ahead of schedule, was not expected to be here. I just think this is naturally the moment where they bow out. And please send this particular clip to Freezing Cold Takes, should I be wrong.
Is there any apprehension about this team not making it to the Super Bowl? Like, what's the big thing that's if there's one thing that scares Detroit Lions fans, what is it?
So, Jay, I run teams through 8 different criteria, and I've been doing this for 10 years. And every single year, I don't have to accurately predict the Super Bowl winner. I tell you the 1 or 2 teams that could win the Super Bowl. Here's the problem. This year, it's the first year since I've been doing this, 4 different teams qualify. Wow. Okay? 4 different teams meet the criteria who could win the Super Bowl. Buffalo, Baltimore. Whew, thank God one of them is going to be gone this weekend, right? And then Detroit and Philadelphia. The folks here are up in arms about me because I said, if you played Philadelphia tomorrow, I'm picking the Eagles. Mm-hmm. And they don't like to hear that, obviously. What I need to see to pick Detroit is who's coming back. Okay? They're telling us that Carlton Davis is probably not going to be back this season. Well, I don't fully understand the why behind that. He's had a broken jaw. The jaw is reset. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure out the why behind that. I'm not a doctor, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But I'm trying to figure that all out. If you're telling me that Detroit is playing Philadelphia as is, I'm saying Philadelphia wins that game. But I'm leaving open the possibility that depending on who comes back, that my pick could change. That's just not information I have at this moment.
And you never know. Philadelphia might lose some guys, because it's a battle as well. Before I let you go, I got to ask you about the Wings, man. I got a bunch of my buddy Jim Costa up there. I got a bunch of friends that are big Red Wings fans. I mean, my goodness, Detroit, the new coach, get Todd McClellan in there sooner for Derek Lalonde. And man, they look like a different team, Marc Ryan.
Todd McClellan. In Todd, we trust. Mm-hmm. You know who he reminds me of, Jay? Covering Steve Spurrier. Wow. He reminds me of Steve Spurrier in the fact that he's an old school coach in a new school era who doesn't give a damn about political correctness. Last night they had a player, Hull, who had a really bad outing, and
Justin
they lose.
Hull, right?
Yeah. They lose at home to the San Jose Sharks, and they asked him, why did you take him out of the game? And he said, did you see his play? He took himself out of the game. You know what I mean?
Boom.
He took himself out of the game, okay? But because of his play was so poor. Did you see his play? He took himself out of the game. This team needed a kick in the ass, a kick in the backside, to get going. They were going through the motions. One of the best pieces of advice, Jay, I ever got in our business was if you're not excited as a host about what you're talking about, why would your audience be?
Right.
Okay. So they had a coach, Derek Lalone, and I'm glad they left him all alone. See what I did there? They had a coach who didn't inspire anybody.
Right.
His press conferences were boring. Everything was politically correct. There was no juice. There was no enthusiasm. He had a team that was like punch in, punch out, clock in, clock out, going through the motions. Now they have an ass kicker. And now they have somebody who holds them accountable. And it is the most pristine, beautiful thing I've ever seen. What is this team ceiling? I did a show at Little Caesars Arena for the Red Wings game on Sunday. And I said, I would put the ceiling for this team now as conference finals participant.
Wow.
I think they could go that far. And I also do believe that Steve Yzerman in year 6 should have to make the playoffs to keep his job.
The Yzer plan. Yep.
Yeah, the Yzer plan. Jay, in our fields, do you get 6 years to be bad?
Not at
You're like,
all.
it's like, you know, in our field, you don't get 1 year to be bad. You know, he's had 6 years with no playoff berths. You got to have a plan to get into the postseason now. Nobody gets 6 to 8 years. The difference between Yzerman here and Yzerman there in Tampa Bay, my home of Tampa Bay, the difference is that he was really finding middle round finds in Tampa Bay. He's not doing that here. His first round picks are good. His middle round picks have not been good. The depth on the team isn't there. The stars on the team play like stars. And then the middle of the pack guys, the third and fourth line guys play like they're in the ECHL, you know, and that's a really big problem.
Yeah, I know Al Murray, the head of scouting here for the Tampa Bay Lightning, the guy that helped put together the Kings teams with Kopitar and those guys. He was the guy that found all of those mid-round stars for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But hey, you never know, Mark. I mean, now could be the time that they find their groove, and you never know. A guy that gets called up could be that next Brayden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Andre Palat. You never know. The great Marc Ryan from up there, 97 The Ticket. Marc Ryan on air, talking all things Detroit. Mark, I'm so glad of all of your personal and professional success and happiness. I always try to tune in and listen to you when I can, and I always keep an eye on you on social media. Appreciate the love and support, my man. Enjoy the games this weekend, and have a great rest of your week. We'll talk soon.
I need to say something to you, too.
Go ahead.
I need to say something to you. Guys, you know, they say, and I have been, you know, we've all lost jobs in our industry. And I have been where Jay has been, and I could be where Jay is tomorrow. And what I want to tell you is I reached out to Jay right after it all went down. And you have never met a guy who lost a job who had a better outlook and a better attitude. And they say that in life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you make of it. And Jay Recher not only is an incredibly talented person, but he gets after it, and he's got a great attitude. And 86% of your life is going to be your attitude and how you.
Oh, we lost Mark when he was saying the nicest thing ever about. That's so ironic that we lost him. Oh, he's back. You're back.
Wait. I got to call Jay. I got to call Jay, and I don't know. I'm not wise enough to know how to prevent the call from knocking me off.
Right.
But you 86% of your success in life is due to attitude. You've got the right attitude, my man. The world is your oyster. Whatever you want to do is what you will do. I'm incredibly proud of you, and I continue to be proud of you. It was an honor to work with you, and it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, my friend. Hold on. Marc Ryan. Right now, the check is in the mail right now, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Keep up the great work.
Available for representation. Yes.
You're the best, my friend. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the game this weekend. Thank you.
I miss all you guys in Tampa. Be well, guys. Take care.
We miss you too. The one and only Marc Ryan. Oh, man, that story about him going to Canada is freaking hilarious. Yes, and thank you to everybody, Mark included, who reached out after I got let go. But, hey, it's just the way it is. I love what Mark had to say. Life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. And, yeah, I'm feeling good. And that's one of the reasons why I feel good, because of people like Mark and people like you. Thank you all for all the nice words and being part of the conversations and being part of the J Recher podcast. This is something that's going to really just continue to be pushed to higher heights as the year goes on. But how do you do that? You follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. Like and subscribe on YouTube, man. That helps out in such a big way. Share this with your friends, your family members, your dentists, your local politicians, your mailmen, your mailwomen, everybody. Let them know the J Recher podcast live every day at noon here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I am going to Ian's place right now. We're going to do the podcast at 3:00. The goal is for it to be live. I don't know if there's going to be internet over there at the Dignitary Tea in Kava House. We'll find out. If not, we'll record it and we'll let everybody know where you could hear it. But I can't wait. I'll be at the Angling Center tonight for USF and UAB. If you're going to be in the building, make sure you come by and say hello. A big thank you to Greg Auman, to Erik Erlendsson, and to Marc Ryan for joining us on the show, and for you for tuning in today. We'll be back tomorrow at noon right here on the J Recher podcast. I am gone. Peace out.